His book is called Damn the Valley, about his combat experience in 1st Platoon, Bravo Company in Afghanistan. And author William Yeske joins us now. Will, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here.
And I see you have your book prominently displayed up front. Love that.
Yes, thank you.
Before we get into the story, I wanted to ask, because I read that you encountered some friction with some of your fellow soldiers when you were researching and about to write the book. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, so really, when you're dealing with situations such as this and something to where you're really presenting it in such a vivid way, you're bringing back, I cover this in the author's note, you're bringing up and you're covering these people's memories. So when you have, 125, 150 guys on a battlefield, quite honestly, any traumatic moment like that, if that many people witness it, you're going to have that many separate stories because there's that many different perspectives and vantage points. So there was another work that had come out to where everyone was a little bit nervous. Hey, is my point of view going to be, and it was almost like it challenged emotionally what they were holding inside as trauma. And that's really when I started talking to the guys about the process that I wanted to implement with this book, and that they would see what was being presented, and that there was actually a format to where I was bringing in, okay, three people for every instance that was being presented. But then if there's any sort of discrepancies, okay, now I need to bring in, at least two
Yeah.
more and start to really delve into it. And when you do that, and when you take something that from a deployment to where we had a 52% casualty rate,
Yeah.
you're bound to have traumas come up. And we did, I mean, even with reading this stuff, these guys reported, I'm sitting on my couch reading this, and I had to put it down because I'm starting to get the smells of the battlefield.
Oh, wow.
And I kind of became concerned at that point, because I'm like, all right, am I going to trigger someone here into some sort of,
Oh,
episode?
yeah. Yeah, I can imagine.
And it was with talking with some of the different psychology teams and stuff that I've uh, been with along the way, that they were like, hey, so this is exactly what's happening is the olfactory nerves are some of the first ones to kind of tickle the senses as these traumas are coming back, as you're experiencing past trauma. And that's exactly what was happening with these guys. So it was being presented in such a way where it was so real to them, where they were re-experiencing the battlefield. And all in all, once everything was said and done and the guys saw through it, and was really one of the sayings from my old commander, Captain Adam Armstrong. He used to say, deeds, not words. And it was
Hmm.
putting this stuff down into something and showing the guys that, look, this is something honorable. This is something that depicts what we did on the battlefield out there. And really every step of the way since then, down to even the photos that have fueled the social media and even the front cover here. This is all stuff from the battlefield. The historical aspect is
Right.
built within this to where, I mean, the flag from the front cover is now housed down at the Airborne and Special Operations Museum in Fayetteville. Somebody actually recovered it and reached out once we started this.
Oh, wow.
It's wild.
Amazing. Moving into the story, your writing is riveting. You're a very good writer. So, a very good writer. And I was reading about some of the engagements, including the Halloween zombie massacre. But is there an engagement that stood out for you that was personally impactful?
Oh, absolutely. The one that really for me, it was really tough to put down, and I wanted to make sure that I got it right. And that was the day after Christmas when Specialist Jason Johnson was killed in action while crossing um, over a wall and was killed by an IED blast. And that was a portion that I had walked over just 30 seconds prior.
Mm.
And I'm looking back at these guys as they're walking in and calling up our position when all of a sudden everybody disappears. You see the shockwave cross the grass, and then the dust hits you, and that realization of we just hit an IED. That was really that turning point. You know, you talk about the zombie massacre here. It's we're on that high. Nobody was injured during there, and you just kind of feel invincible. Um,
Right.
you know, into the Arghandab Valley to where all of a sudden you've taken a pretty horrific scene there. I know even the publisher had kind of come back and said, like, does the family know that this is coming out like this just because it's presented? So you tell everything here. It is raw. And that was one of the hardest things to do for me was to reach out and talk to the family members about that. Um, and it was really interesting actually. The mother of Specialist Johnson, just her trust. The only thing she asked me was if his best friend out there, Specialist Leeson, if he knew about it and if he had read it. And I was like, yeah, Lisa knows. And she was like, good enough for me. Like,
Uh,
that's okay then. And to have that
excellent.
trust in the guys, it was just unbelievable to see, you know.
Yeah, and really raw. Now, I know when we first started talking, you mentioned another author who wrote the story um,
Yes.
of Bravo
Ben
Company,
Kessling.
Ben
Yeah.
Kessling, who I've interviewed on this podcast. I was interested to learn that you and your fellow soldiers had a nickname for his book called The Book You Love to Hate. Could you go into that briefly?
So that was kind of a play on words there because I know in reading it, you must, or at least I hope so. I hope it comes through to the reader. I kind of try and leave it up to the reader, but there was a rift when his book came out. It kind of created a rift and brought these emotions to the surface and everything. And really, a lot of that story, one of the main characters there is Sergeant Alan Thomas. He was my squad leader at one point, and as a matter of fact, I was the one who called in the medevac for the bird that evacuated him after he had been hit by the suicide bomber. I really enjoyed it. I mean, as a matter of fact, I'd say it in the book, when I pulled that out of my mailbox and I saw that front cover, I started to cry.
Hmm.
And it was that somebody had listened to our story and somebody was trying to actively present this when it had been ignored for so long. I mean, I've talked to through this other journalists and stuff, and they're like, wow, what awards did you guys get as a unit through here? And like, what? And I'm like, we got a blanket ARCOM, like, we got nothing. And they're flabbergasted. And we always kind of figured it as this is an infantry thing. We go through the suck, and
Yeah,
this is just how it is. Um, but catching back on, on that end, it is pretty wild to see and to go through. But I mean, I liked Ben's book, and I like the fact that it covers other angles that we didn't get to see.
sure.
Like he sat down with Specialist Joey Karen, which was another one that was killed out there. He sat down with his father and kind of went through the process of how that happened. And then that after, um, when Sergeant Thomas came back and kind of his struggle with suicidal ideations and what happened there, and his journey through Walter Reed, that end needs to be covered. I could only cover from my end, in first platoon on the battlefield. And I really love that Ben covered, other ends that maybe some of us wouldn't have seen or
Yeah.
seen from that angle and expressed it and put it out there. So, yes, there was a little bit of contention, but quite honestly, one of the guys, Jared Lemon, he had really said it best when he was like, I don't think it's that people have a problem with this book. I think it's that they still have a problem. Their own emotions. They're still experiencing these traumas and
Yeah.
it's tugging on that part of their heart. And that's where the problem lies. I don't think it's here, it's within themselves.
Sort of a love-hate relationship with
Like,
the book.
exactly. Hence the wording of the chapter. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I know we spoke about the engagement that impacted you personally, um, but during the deployment, was there a moment that you felt like maybe it was what you just mentioned, but a moment which you said to yourself, "This is I'm not going to be the same after this."
the one that really kind of changed would be the change within a soldier's outlook there. And that was leaving the entry control point to go onto a combat patrol on Cop Johnston. I started finding myself as we're leaving the wire there and thinking, all right, who's it going to be next? Who's going to step on one this next patrol? And I had to stop myself and go, look, you can't think of this like that because it very well could be you. All you can do is stay in your lane and do the job to the best of your ability. I've kind of taken that forward, you know. I mean, it's you sort of have to realize that all of us. We never know the time. We're already dead. So start living. You know, so many people never cross that threshold. And really, it's been through the book project to where it's pushed me to different heights and everything, you know, along in other spots in my life as well. It's helped me along through my college experience, business school after the service in 2.5 years, and then on to now I'm Columbia Business alumni for continuing education. Uh, and then the book thing as well, to be able to take this, but then turn it into something to where I would have never ever guessed. I mean, I'm not an author. I didn't go to school for journalism or writing. This was just something that was inside. But to be able to take it and turn it into something through my marketing experience and look at it and go, all right, where can we push this next? When I got that book deal back, you
Mm-hmm.
know, that was such a shot in the dark. That was a cold call to a publisher after I had read um, a book called We Few by Nick Brockhausen. And the style was very much the same as this one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I reached out to the editor and sent them a 60,000 word raw manuscript. And they were like,
Shocked,
can I bring this?
probably.
Yeah. They were just like, wow, like, can I bring this to the round table in 2 weeks? And a week later I had a book deal and I couldn't believe it. But then at that point, it's almost like airborne school when the doors open to the plane and everything becomes real, you
Mm,
know?
sure.
Um, and that's when I really had to hold myself to the fire and hence, you know, starting to reach out to the guys about the artifacts that are now held within the DoD historical archives at the Airborne and Special Operations Museum in Fayetteville. I mean, the flag from the cover, but also there's other stories in there with Lee and the suicide bomber, the backpack that he had put down that was full of holes. That's there. The PMAG, the hats we were wearing. I have a set of boots, you know, and guys just started turning things in from around the country, and the museum was just like flabbergasted. They didn't understand, and they couldn't wrap their head around it. But at the same time, to these guys, now they can take their grandchildren down to this museum and tell the stories of old. And these are the stories that we need to be sharing with others.
Yeah, yeah. That honors the service and the sacrifice that was made. Absolutely. You mentioned how you were able to take the combat experience into business school and other endeavors. And to wrap it up, I know you're doing a lot for veterans. Can you speak about some of your nonprofit work?
So some of the nonprofit work and stuff has just been it's been things that I've picked up along the way and just started helping other guys within the community. And it's stuff that I really hope that, again, deeds not words, other guys seeing this stuff and bringing things forward and helping each other. There was actually a book 5 years ago. I wrote this thing 5 years ago about my transition out of service and then some of the struggles I faced along the way. You know, I gained weight along the way. Um, you know, there was tackling a house, buying a house and having something because when you're on the GI Bill, they don't take that as normal income. So all
Oh,
of the way to navigate this and to get through it, I put it all down for others. And I've been sharing it with others along the way, but it was, well, no one's going to really pay attention to it because I'm not anybody yet. And then it was holding myself to the fire. And then through this thing, that's very possibly the next step, but it's been something that it's really giving back and it's reinstilling that purpose in moving forward. And I hope it's a model for other guys to reinstill that purpose within them and light that fire to become leaders within their own communities,
right.
especially in a time to where we're kind of experience a bit of a lack of leadership across the board. I'm just saying that during the service, we've seen what good leadership looks like and what wrong leadership looks like.
Yeah.
So when you've seen the way, you know what right looks like, and you have a duty to hold it for other people out there. And I feel like it's time for us to start giving back.
Very well said. Very well said. The book is called Damn the Valley. Will, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
No, thank you for having me. It's been great.
That's it for this episode. Thanks so much for joining me. For a related episode, check out my interview with Ben Kessling, author of Bravo Company. I'm Robert Child, and this has been Point of the Spear.
Music licensed from audioblocks.com. Point of the Spear is produced by RSC Media Group.